The launch of the campaign used a television advert during the opening of the Rugby World Cup in 2015 and invited consumers to tell their own holiday and travel stories on social media via the hashtag #TimeFlies. They ended the advert reaffirming their strong pricing strategy, reminding customers of the low-cost flights. Alongside the launch of the campaign, easyJet re-released the first ever television advert on social media, which compared the cost of a flight to the price of a pair of jeans. This shows easyJet's diligent pricing strategy, as the price of the flight has stayed the same over 20 years. Additionally, for the campaign, easyJet created entirely personalised, dynamic emails.
To celebrate easyJet's 20th birthday, easyJet took the opportunity to communicate brand heritage and to fully appreciate its customers. easyJet wanted to avoid self-congratulating and tell a story that could connect personally with each of their customers. The campaign wanted to remind audience of their favourite adventures from the past 20 years and the role easyJet played, and to ensure easyJet was at the front of their minds and amongst the top considered airlines when a consumer was considering their next holiday. The creative approach behind easyJet's campaign used data to personalise stories for each individual consumer. Stories were adapted to those who had flown only once and to those that had travelled hundreds of miles. easyJet used a series of 12 modules, integrating them together to tell the best story of each individual consumer. These included personal travel recommendations from already profiled destinations. easyJet also launched a television advert that brought a family story to life, using a Ferris wheel to spin through the 20 years of growth easyJet has been through. Additionally, on social media, easyJet integrated the Time Flies campaign with the How 20 Years Have Flown campaign. Time Flies called for those who have flown with the airline since 1995 to share their favourite holiday snaps across their travels. Photos were used to create a mosaic for a special 20th birthday aircraft.
When looking at the rationale behind the approach, easyJet wanted to take a different approach to celebrating its 20 years. Rather than be self-congratulatory, easyJet told a story with the hopes of resonating personally and emotionally with its consumers. The company wanted to use data collected over 20 years to show how consumers' histories were linked to easyJet. These insights allowed easyJet to build personalised stories by understanding long-term behaviours and trends.
Television, email and social were used as part of the How 20 Years Have Flown campaign.
Photos from easyJet's Time Flies campaign were posted on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and their social media competition featured winners on a weekly basis. easyJet were proud of being one of the first companies to utilise the new advertising opportunities on Instagram and felt their creative concept integrated well with the platform. Consumers who entered the Time Flies competition were also featured in easyJet's in-flight magazine, read by 68 million passengers per year, and their photos also appeared across easyJet's website, social channels, emails and digital media.
easyJet's Time Flies campaign launched on the 18th of September 2015 and ran for a period of 5 weeks until its 20th birthday on the 10th of November. The TV advertising campaign was first launched in the UK on the 18th of September 2015 during the opening of the Rugby World Cup game. Additionally, the email campaign was launched during the same period as the social and television campaign.
Specifically talking about email, the multimedia advertising campaign had a budget of £10 million. The campaign sent a total of 12,473,608 unique emails, which resulted in a 163% higher open rate compared to the average easyJet newsletter, resulting in a 121% higher click-through rate. The first wave of the campaign had an estimated reach of over 685,000 and had more than 1.1 million impressions. The 20th anniversary campaign generated a whopping 103 million in revenue, an uplift of 65 million. As part of the integrated social media campaign, easyJet invited consumers to share their holiday snaps from the past 20 years. VCCP and easyJet set a KPI of 10,000 entries for the competition. The KPI is benchmarked against other user-generated content competitions which had ran. The results surpassed the 10,000 entries, reaching over 110,000 entries in the first 5 weeks of the campaign being live. With the first day of the campaign launching, the dedicated microsite combined with entries across social media exceeded over 5,000 entries, with consumer engaging across more than 8 European countries. The television advertising campaign was first launched in the UK on the 18th of September 2015 during the opening of the Rugby World Cup game. Based on viewership figures of the match, ITV's ratings peaked at 9.4 million people. On average, 8.7 million people stayed tuned between the kickoff and the final whistle. Therefore, it can be estimated that the ad reached an average of 8.7 million people during its first broadcast.
easyJet's celebratory 20 years TV ad campaign involved music by English alternative rock band called Pulp in 1995, with the track called Disco 2000. The music was chosen to emphasise the 20 years that had been since the brand has started operating. easyJet's social campaign involved passengers sending in their holiday content. This was first started by a tweet by easyJet inviting customers to take part in the campaign. Along with their tweet was a picture attached of an example of Ella's parents, which was dated in 2013. This was of a girl enjoying herself by the pool. This was meant to inspire easyJet passengers to tweet and share their holiday pictures for a chance to become part of easyJet's campaign. easyJet's email campaign involved passengers receiving information and interesting facts about all of their previous trips that they have made with the brand in the past 20 years.
The Time Flies campaign invited consumers to share their holiday experiences that they've had with easyJet in the last 20 years. The campaign specifically targeted those that had flown with the company between 1995 and 2015. Television ads specifically targeted easyJet's key demographic of those aged 16 to 24 and 25 to 34-year-olds. The ad started with two young individuals meeting on an easyJet flight and falling in love. The couple go on to have a daughter, and as the Ferris wheel cycles around, we see the family age. At the end of the advert, the now grown daughter sits next to another man. The advert aimed to inspire the next generation of travellers. In particular, the email campaign targeted anyone that had flown with the company since its launch in 1995. No matter if you'd only flown once or many times, the campaign was personalised to resonate with individuals based on the data the company held. Data collected by Mintel's 2017 UK airline report compiled a user profile for easyJet. The profile highlighted that consumers of the airline would fit within the ABC1 social grade as well as the C2DE category. The airline is used by both males and females, with key demographics being within the 16 to 24 and 25 to 34 age category, although the airline is still popular with the older audience of 45 to 54 and 55 plus.
Going on to the competitor media analysis, Ryanair launched its first television campaign in 2014 to try and encourage consumers to consider them before booking flights. Advertising agency Dare created the campaign to tackle consumers' negative perception of Ryanair while using the right amount of wit, charm and self-depreciation. Critically, Ryanair's reception from its campaign was not entirely positive, with news articles questioning the airline's advertising. This may be the reason Ryanair invests heavily in press and public relations as they face a battle of changing consumers' perceptions, especially since they were voted most hated brand in the UK. Success has mainly been driven by Ryanair's low price, carrying twice as many passengers as easyJet in 2016. More recent, however, in September 2017, Ryanair have announced they would cancel a further 400,000 bookings due to a backlog of staff holidays, which reduced flight punctuality by 10%. Another competitor, Monarch, launched a campaign the year after easyJet launched its 20-year campaign. Monarch intended to show what set them apart from their rivals through their Our People Make Up campaign, highlighting the attention to detail in customer service experience. In 2017, Monarch Airlines fell into administration. Although multiple factors combined forced Monarch into administration, Monarch never sat within the family package airline and the low-cost airline fields. They were somewhere in between. Competition for these flights were taken by both Ryanair and easyJet, leaving other airlines, including Monarch, to lose revenue. Monarch simply could not keep up with Ryanair and easyJet's strong pricing strategies.
The campaign was successful in two ways. It was first financially successful, generating 103 million in revenue for easyJet. Secondly, it was successful in connecting with consumers. easyJet is a well-known aviation brand, with key words related to the brand such as competitive, convenient and good value, contrasted to the words such as misleading, disappointed and incomplete for those consumers who dislike the brand. What was surprising about the campaign was that love was the most commonly used word used to describe those who received the campaign across all social media, a word not normally associated with an email campaign nor the brand.
According to Hotch and Ha, cognitive learning processes are important to marketers since they are helpful in predicting consumer responses to advertising. The cognitive process model can be applied to easyJet's How 20 Years Have Flown campaign. As previously mentioned, easyJet wanted to ensure they were at the front of consumers' minds when they were considering their next holiday. easyJet used How 20 Years Have Flown as the main message to remind consumers of their part in the customer's happy memories. The receptiveness of a consumer towards a message is based on the quality of an advert based on creativity, execution, tone and style. The cognitive response after receiving a message is a combination of product message thought, source-orientated thought and added execution thought, all of which blend together and overlap. So product message thought, these are thought to be counter-arguments, or when a consumer does not agree with the message. This could be seen to be negative responses on social media to easyJet's campaign, which could be motivated by user experience during previous flights. Source-orientated thought is consumers' responses to the source of the advert, in this case, easyJet. If a consumer is distrustful of easyJet, then the consumer may not accept the message or see it as true. The ad execution thought. Consumers may feel the ad is not executed correctly. They may not feel an emotional connection to then respond to an advertisement. This could be true within easyJet's campaign. The story told of two people falling in love and may not be what consumers associate with easyJet already, especially those travelling on business and therefore will not respond. The attitude to the product and brand and attitude to the advertisement have a large effect on the customer's response. Consumers will form an attitude towards an advertisement and form then an opinion of the brand. A positive response to the advert will associate those feelings with the brand and stimulate thoughts on purchasing. This is exactly what easyJet wants to achieve. An advert that would be positively received and therefore associate with their brand. However, attitudes are still influenced by user experience, and as easyJet's campaign was targeted at customers who had already used easyJet services, those with negative perceptions of easyJet may not respond positively to future advertising campaigns. Ultimately, these thoughts and attitudes will be formed together to create purchase intention from the consumer.
The hierarchy of effects model was created in 1961 by Robert Leveridge and Gary Steiner. The communications model suggests there are 6 steps from viewing an advertisement to purchasing the product or service. The job of the advertiser is to encourage the consumer to go through each of the steps, eventually leading the consumer to purchase the product. Brands' communications are unlikely to create an impact all at once. The more exposure an individual gets to a brand's communications, the more the recipient will be made aware of a product or service that could inevitably lead to a purchase decision. The hierarchy of communications effects model suggests that people who start at the bottom of the model are completely unaware of a product, and those at the top are consumers that are aware of the product and actually purchase it. One problem with the model is the process is considerably linear, which is not always the case. Individuals can become aware of a product and form an instant liking to it without having the detailed knowledge about it. People also buy products on impulse and form an opinion about them afterwards. Leveridge and Steiner suggested that the 6 steps can be split into 3 stages of consumer behaviour. First, we have connotative, which is to do with thinking. Consumers become aware of the product or service and gather relevant product knowledge. Second, we have affective, which is to do with feeling. Affective refers to the experience of feelings or emotions where consumers gather a sense of liking and preference towards a product or service. Finally, we have connotative. This is a behaviour and doing action. The aspect of mental processes or behaviour directed towards an action or change and includes impulse, desire and striving. The model is known as a hierarchy because the number of consumers moving from one stage to the next reduces as you move through the model. There may be a lot of consumers that see the product advert, but not everyone will make a purchase. It takes a lot of work to take a consumer from awareness to the final stage of purchase. The hierarchy of effects model can be applied to easyJet's How 20 Years Have Flown campaign. As stated before, the model is perceived to be considerably linear, but this is not always the case. As easyJet is a well-known aviation brand, marketing communications from a hierarchy effects model may eliminate the cognitive stage as the brand is already well known. This is emphasised by research conducted by Mintel, which suggests that of those surveyed, 94% of people are aware of the brand. easyJet's CRM campaign was aimed at those that had already travelled with the company. The campaign focused on a connotative-orientated marketing, which is best suited to facilitating product purchase or buying actions. The campaign was successful in both, generating over 103 million in revenue. Furthermore, the Time Flies social media campaign invited users to share their holiday snaps from holidays that they've taken with easyJet over the last 20 years. The campaign was affective-orientated, which are better for achieving brand awareness, preference and conviction. easyJet wants to be at the forefront of people's minds when considering their next holiday. Finally, the television ad was the only medium to target new consumers, using a cognitive-orientated ad, which works best for achieving brand awareness and brand knowledge. The television ad highlighted its diligent pricing strategy by reaffirming easyJet's low-cost flight. This is likely to drive awareness and knowledge, as people are likely to search for possible travel destinations for such a cheap price. This will eventually lead consumers to an affective state, driving to an actual purchase. Developed by Gutman in 1982, the means-end chain model suggests that values are a dominant factor in the pattern of consumer purchase. The approach is based on the assumption that products and services attributes are associated with consequences or product benefits and risks, and even personal values that the product can help consumers fulfill. The means-end theory suggests that an advertisement should contain a message or a means that leads the consumer to a desired end state. A means-end chain should start with a process in which viewing an ad leads consumers to believe that using said product or service will help to achieve personal values. The purpose of the means-end theory is to enable marketers to understand the desired end state of consumers and include this within their campaign. The campaign should display how purchasing the product can lead the consumer to reach their desired end state. Looking specifically at the CRM emails that were sent as part of the How 20 Years Have Flown campaign, the means-end chain theory can be applied by working backwards as the campaign has already been executed. First, the value chain starts with the attribute. This is the tangible product features of an advertisement. In this case, the feature of the emails was to celebrate easyJet turning 20 by highlighting the consumer's past history. that they have had with easyJet, alongside the recommended travel destinations that were suggested based on the data the company holds on the consumer. Secondly is the functional consequences. These are the immediate and tangible benefits achieved from the experience with the product. The functional consequences of the email were to highlight the history that consumers had with the brand and to connect personally and emotionally via the content of the email. Thirdly is the psychosocial consequences. These are the emotional benefits achieved from experiences with the product. By highlighting the history that consumers have with the brand, it allows consumers to resonate and connect personally with easyJet via nostalgia, as consumers will be able to relive the memories of the trips they have taken over the last 20 years. Finally, we have the value. This is the state of mind that the consumer is trying to achieve. By connecting emotionally and personally, the value that reliving the past history that consumer shares with easyJet might feel a sense of happiness, self-fulfillment and excitement. Based on the suggestions that easyJet recommended, consumers can start to plan their next travel destination, and with that comes all new memories that they can make. The FCB matrix was created by Richard Vaughan in 1980. The FCB grid helps us understand where a product stands in the mind of a consumer by estimating whether or not purchases require a highly involved emotional decision or a highly involved intellectual decision. The model has a strong reference to the difference between involvement, thinking, and feeling in consumer purchasing habits. At the upper left, quadrant 1, decisions are based on highly involved thinking. Purchase requires information first, which leads to awareness and a considered buy. At the upper right, quadrant 2, decisions are based on highly involved feelings. Purchases require reflection first, as personal ego and self-esteem persuades us to buy. At the lower left, quadrant 3, decisions are based on lowly involved thinking. Purchase of practical goods based on habit and routine behaviour. We learn about the product only after taking it home and not before. At the lower right, quadrant 4, decisions are based on lowly involved feelings. It is the purchase of pleasure products driven by quick personal peer-led satisfaction. Quadrant 4 motto is just do it.
The FCB matrix model can be applied to easyJet's 20 years have flown campaign, as this model explains that there is different aspects involved with purchasing an item. This can be categorised into segmentations which allow the consumer to break down the difference between the psychological and impulsive buying due to need and want. Relating this to easyJet, in reality, buying a flight or a holiday is placed in a high involvement and rational thinking. With easyJet's 20 years have flown campaign, the brand could have been seen to trying to move the consumer from a think, feel, do to a feel, think, do. This is a high involvement and higher psychological feeling, involving the customer throughout personalised emails, a TV ad that helps the customer travel through time in easyJet's success, and also their involvement with the target market on social media. All of these features have shifted the consumer's attitudes and feelings towards buying a easyJet flight as a slight impulse decision. The impulse takes over the deep thought of making a decision. The feel function comes first, as the consumer would have to relate to easyJet's ads and social media campaigns by relating back to their own personal lives in relation to having made trips with easyJet in the past. The function of thinking would come into play when the consumer's deciding to buy their next trip that they wish to take with easyJet. This may be about destinations or their overall experience with easyJet as a whole. Furthermore, thinking logically in terms of timing for their break and financial stability. Final function would be put down to the actions towards the feeling and thinking process that are involved by creating a doing action. This would be purchasing a flight from easyJet. Through completing their process, a feeling of happiness and excitement may overcome the consumer to know that they will be flying with easyJet in the near future.
Did you know that it costs up to 5 times more to attract a new customer than it is to keep an existing one? The first rule of any business is to retain consumers and build a loyal relationship with them. One future recommendation for easyJet is to establish a customer loyalty program. In the last year, 74% of seats on easyJet's flights were booked by returning customers. There has been a strong increase in consumer loyalty in core markets, with returning customers in the UK increasing by 9%. easyJet have launched a fight club aimed at their most valuable flyers, identified through their customer database. It is suggested that further development into the consumer loyalty scheme is to be adapted by easyJet, offering a vast range of rewards and incentives for those consumers who are returning and frequent flyers. According to research by Invest, 76% of companies see customer lifetime value as an important concept for their organisation. Customer lifetime value is an important aspect for easyJet in the highly competitive aviation market. As mentioned previously, easyJet have piloted a fight club to encourage consumer loyalty to the brand. The initial trial was by invitation only and invited 15,000 high-frequent flyers to a scheme that provided passengers with a range of features, including increased flexibility on changes to bookings, price promises, and and a dedicated customer service team. The issue is that easyJet is only targeting frequent flyers, which they define as those individuals that fly with us more than 20 times a year. CEO Caroline McCall states that more than 50 million of easyJet's consumers have flown with us before and choose to fly with us again. easyJet are choosing to offer only a range of rewards to a handful of their customers. It suggested that easyJet offers a tiered consumer loyalty program, which essentially means the more you fly with easyJet within a given year, the higher tier you will be and the bigger rewards you can expect to gain.
A further recommendation would be to invest in public relations to improve image. With Monarch's recent fall into administration due to multiple factors, including rife competition and economic burdens, it is important to keep hold of a positive reputation. As Monarch could not compete with the likes of easyJet and Ryanair's strong price strategy, easyJet could now become the top airline in the budget airline market. As Ryanair continued to use press as a large part of their reach, easyJet could take a hold of their competitors' negative press to make themselves look superior in the budget airline market. According to ACRE, it is important organisations spend a great deal of money on advertising to build strong, favourable images in the minds of their consumers.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.